r/nosleep. Posted by you/horror_writer_1717. Never swerve to miss a deer. You could hit something much worse. It was one of those nights. The fog hovered in the air like a curtain waiting to rise on a show I would never forget. Being called into work early on 3 hours of sleep was bad enough. Driving through the fog that was so thick you can feel it holding back the car makes for an interesting morning. Maybe listening to Metallica's All Nightmare Long at 3 a.m. wasn't the best choice. It started with the floating legs. As I drove, I saw a pair of blue jeans standing along the side of the road, just the legs. It was like someone had stood half a mannequin beside the road to freak people out. As I came closer, I could see there was a black hoodie on top of them in a vaguely human form. The head turned toward me, but I could see nothing inside the hood. The chill went up my spine as my foot went down on the accelerator. I was so freaked out that I never saw the deer running straight toward me. It wasn't until it was right beside my car that I noticed it. It startled me so badly that I swerved to miss it and ended up on a side road I'd never driven on or even seen before. I hadn't gone far before I calmed down and realized I had made a wrong turn. I stopped in front of a road sign that mesmerized me. It had once been a standard deer crossing sign, the one with the silhouetted buck leaping in the air. However, this one had been modified by a talented artist. The painted additions made the deer enormous, bigger than a moose. It also had a mouthful of shark-like teeth, a spiked tail, and glowing red eyes. The sight of this fanciful creature should have made me laugh, but after the morning I'd already had, it chilled me to the bone. I immediately did a 3-point turn and floored it. I made it maybe 100 yards. My front tire, which wasn't in the greatest shape, gave into the stress and had a catastrophic blowout. This, plus my speed, sent me careening off the road and into a deep ravine. At least that's where I woke up, in a deep ravine. I willed my blurry eyes to clear and was immediately sorry I had. Every window was shattered. Tree limbs shot this way and that all through the car's interior. It looked like the love child of an ant and a Buick. My seatbelt held me fast, and the deflated airbag laid out before me like a miniature blanket of snow. I leaned forward and was twice rewarded. The first by pain. My chest and arms felt like they were on fire. The second was the realization that I wasn't on the ground. The car creaked and groaned when I moved. It stood straight up, resting precariously on a large tree limb. I couldn't see how far it was to the bottom because of the same fog that got me into this predicament. Okay, this is bad. I can't even hope for help. No one would ever see me down here. To keep me calm, I did some physical assessments, starting at the feet. Toes wiggle, that's good. Right leg bends, left leg oh my god. I'm gonna call feeling like I've been stabbed by 1,000 knives, bad. I leaned forward just enough to see my leg. My pants were covered in blood. I tried to reach the wound but stopped when the branch made a cracking sound. Okay, we'll come back to that. Moving on, my lower abdomen seems okay, my ribs feel like they're the main course at a barbecue, and my arms shoot daggers every time I try to move them. The most disturbing part of all this is the lack of blood on my shirt. Okay, end assessment, possible broken leg, possible broken ribs, possible internal bleeding. Car destroyed, hanging precariously in a tree that could give out and send me falling to my death at any minute. Low possibility of rescue due to the early morning hour, fog, and being out of sight of the road. So, essentially, I'm dead. The worst part of all of this was being alone with my thoughts, knowing that death was on its way, and there was nothing I could do about it. All these thoughts disappeared as a slight breeze made the hair on my neck stand on end, and I heard a low rumble. I slowly turned to face the noise and wondered if I was hallucinating. I saw 2 huge red orbs coming steadily towards me out of the fog. As they approached I could see they were attached to a monstrosity. The creature stopped right beside the car. The artist on the sign didn't do it justice. My breathing became rapid and shallow as my heart jackhammered in my chest. A warm liquid ran down my leg that had nothing to do with the car. Its glowing red eyes were the size of basketballs. Its teeth looked like they came straight out of the shark from Jaws. Its claws were as long as hunting knives. I stifled a scream as my injuries were forgotten. The huge red eyes were so close I could feel the warmth coming off of them. It stared at me. Don't move. Don't breathe. Don't think. It ripped the door off the car and inhaled as if sniffing me. Oh me god, oh me god, oh me god, oh me god, oh me god. It backed out, then grabbed the car and shook it out of the tree until it toppled over onto its roof. God damn. The roof collapsed from the weight and missed, crushing my head by mere inches. I nearly lost consciousness from the agonizing pain as I hung upside from my seatbelt strapped across my broken ribs. The car began to move. Metal protested as it was dragged through the woods. Oh no, it's taking me back to its cave. I tried to reach the seat belt release, but the pain was too great. I was being dragged helplessly to my death. For what seemed like an eternity, this ride from hell taught me the meaning of pain. Every bump and jostle was a new lesson. The metal screeched in protest as the car finally stopped. The creature sniffed me again. Go ahead, eat me, I screamed. I hope I give you indigestion. The red orb stared at me as if sizing me up to see if it would be enough trouble to rip me out of the car. In desperation, I used the only thing I had available to me. I reached up painfully and pressed the horn. The creature jumped and screamed a horribly loud cry that defied description. The last thing I remember seeing was it running off into the trees as my mind led me into blissful unconsciousness. Beep, beep, beep. All right, I'm up already. I reached for my alarm clock, but it wasn't there. In fact, my bedroom wasn't there either. I woke to incessant beeps pounding my aching head. I looked around the white room at the machines that kept me alive. My eyes settled on the man in uniform standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me. Good morning, he said. Good morning, I rasped back. My name's Sheriff Seacrest. I realize this isn't the best time, but I need to ask you a few questions about your accident. Okay. From the skid marks on the road, I figured you were doing at least 80 when your tire blew. Any reason you were going that fast? Am I under arrest? The sheriff studied me for a moment. No, you're not under arrest. I'm just trying to figure out what happened. I was scared, I said barely above a whisper. Scared of what? Of whatever was in the fog. So, what was in the fog? I laid quiet for a long time. I wrestled with the implications of telling someone else what I saw. I wasn't even sure myself. My imagination. The sheriff seemed a little disappointed. So how did your car get out of the tree, dragged 100 yards, and set on the side of a road? I don't know, Sheriff. I wish I had the answers for you, but I blacked out when I landed in that tree and woke up here. And that's all you remember? Yes, sir. Was there any wildlife around? What do you mean, wildlife? Oh, squirrels, foxes, deer? He said, emphasizing the last word. And nothing that I saw. As I said, I blacked out. He closed his notebook. Thank you for your help. I hope you recover soon. I hope so too. The sheriff started for the door, stopped, turned back, and looked into my eyes as if he desperately wanted to say something, then faltered and said, You're very lucky to be alive. I know. Posted by you/horror_writer_1717. This is one contest you don't want to enter. Dr. Relis, recording a letter found at the scene. I will read this letter in its entirety for the record as it shows the patient's state of mind and may provide potential clues as to his final disposition. I stared up at the buzzing mercury light on the side of the large building. Usually, that's a one-way ticket to a sore neck, but I didn't have to worry about that. A stiff neck was the last of my worries when I'm laying flat on my back in the middle of a parking lot. Not again. I thought as I slowly got up and dusted myself off. For the third time this week, I found myself unconscious. It was becoming very disturbing. I never had these episodes before the accident, and I had no intention of telling anyone about them now, except the doctor. The funny thing was, the doctor had given me a clean bill of health. After a night in the hospital to observe for signs of concussion, they sent me home. The accident mystified me though. I never knew what caused it. Were the brakes faulty? Did the tires fail? Was it driver error? The police said that they would be contacting me for more information. Did they want to charge me with reckless driving? I've never had a ticket in my life. I mentally shook myself. No use worrying about things like that. I thought. Finish your patrol before you get fired. I started again on one of my mandatory walks around the grounds. The smell of salt air, mixed with the rust of the slowly decaying warehouses, was part of my nightly routine. I checked a lock and moved on. Aside from the episodes, my job hadn't changed in over a year. Every night I patrolled the giant warehouses, without fail. The grounds were immense. I walked nearly a half mile to do one patrol. In between, I sat in the guard shack and read, either the newspaper or a book. I had one personal rule about reading on the job: never read suspense or horror. There were too many dark corners on my patrol, and I had a vivid imagination. I finished my patrol and returned to the guard shack. I tried to focus on filling out my paperwork. Ever since the accident, focus had been a problem for me. Sometimes I would be doing a round and suddenly be on the other side of the warehouse, with no idea how I got there. The doctors told me that it was normal for head trauma cases to lose time, as they called it. They gave me some meds and said it should clear up in a week. I knew I was lucky to be alive. Not everyone survives a head-on collision. My second patrol was uneventful. That's just the way things went. Sometimes I had a problem, sometimes everything was fine. It was nearly impossible to predict when problems would arise. Working the night shift was more challenging than people realize. Boredom and sleep were fierce beasts that had to be fought off by drinking caffeine. Lots of caffeine. I never cared for coffee, so I had to get my caffeine fix from sodas. I finished a soda and looked at the bottle to see what prizes were in the contest. It seemed like these sodas were always running one contest or another, offering ungodly sums of money that I knew no one ever won. I was amused at the different prizes they offered just to get more people to drink their brand. It still didn't stop me from playing. It was something to do. I looked at the cap. Instead of a code I saw a name, Carrie Bridges. That's odd, I thought, then went back to reading my book without a second thought. The next night during my rounds, I only lost time once, halfway into my shift. The meds must be helping, I thought as I downed another soda. Again I checked the lid, and again instead of the code there was a name, Jim Yothers. On a lark, I decided to keep the cap. When the morning shift showed up to replace me, I showed it to the other guard. "Jerry, what do you think of this?" I said, showing him the cap. "Did you win?" Jerry asked. "No, read it," I said. "A CJ547BE, Jerry said, confused. "What?" I said, looking at the cap. "Right here, it says Jim Yothers plain as day." Jerry looked at me with concern. "Are you okay, man?" Jerry said. "Yeah," I said, distracted. "It was just a joke." "Ha ha, fooled you." Jerry half smiled. "Good one," he said without enthusiasm. "Well, I'm going to head home and catch some Z's," I said. "Be careful," Jerry said. I could feel his eyes on me all the way to the parking lot. I got home, took a shower, and went to bed. When I got up and got ready for work, I picked up the lid I had kept. Slowly I turned it over and read it. It said Jim Yothers. I tossed the cap in the trash. That night at work, I didn't lose time at all. That made me happy, but the soda caps were beginning to bother me. I had a soda with me but refused to open the bottle. I tried to stay awake by reading the newspaper. I read it from front to back, even the obituaries. I came across a familiar name there, Carrie Bridges. But I couldn't figure out why it seemed familiar. I didn't know anybody by that name. No family, friends, or co-workers. Why did it seem like I should know this name? The answer seemed just out of reach, like a carrot dangling in front of a donkey. Without thinking, I opened a soda bottle and took a long drink. Right in the middle, I realized what I was doing, and sprayed soda in surprise. The cap was still in my hand. I tried to ignore it. I tried not to look. But it was as if my hand had a mind of its own. Slowly I turned the cap over. It read, Jerry Pickering. It was my coworker I had shown it to. I slowly laid the cap down on the task next to the newspaper. The paper was still open to the obituaries, and the name, Carrie Bridges, suddenly made sense. It was the name on the first cap. I read the obituary intently. It said Mr. Bridges had died of natural causes early Monday morning. I searched my memory, trying to remember exactly when I had first read the name. It was after I ate lunch at 4 a.m. My last patrol was around 6. 4 hours from when I read the cap, Carrie Bridges was dead. My mind was reeling. I picked up the open bottle and started to read. To my surprise, it didn't say, win $10,000, it said, see the future. I continued to read the rules. Rule number 1. Do not attempt to warn anyone, penalties are severe. That was the only rule written. I dropped the bottle and started shaking. I collapsed into my chair. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. Fear and imagination grabbed me and dragged me down into unconsciousness. I woke to someone shaking me. As I regained consciousness, my eyes were still hazy. I saw Jerry's face hovering in front of me. The sight of Jerry jerked me awake in an instant. Jerry, you're alive, I said, jumping out of my chair. But Jerry didn't look happy. I could have you fired for this, Jerry said. Sleeping on the job is a major offense. Wait a minute, I said. What time is it? It's 8:15, Jerry said, quite annoyed. Waking you up is putting me behind schedule. 8:15, I repeated slowly. I opened the soda sometime after 4. What are you mumbling about? Jerry said. Jerry, I said suddenly, with a hint of desperation in my voice. Your life could be in danger. Just sit here and I'll go do your round. Are you nuts? Jerry asked. Get out of here. Go home and get some sleep. I'm telling you, your life is in danger, I said desperately. Okay, Jerry said. I'll play along. How do you know my life's in danger? I can't tell you, I said sheepishly. That's what I thought, Jerry said. So you want me to sit here while you do my rounds on your own time, so you can go tell the supervisor I'm slacking off, then he won't believe me that you were sleeping. What? No, I said. I'm doing my own rounds, Jerry said, walking out of the guard shack. Go home. With that, Jerry started toward the warehouse, not paying attention. He walked right in front of an 18-wheeler. The truck was only doing 30 miles per hour, but the force knocked him down. The driver reacted instantly, slamming on the brakes. The result was the opposite of what the driver intended. Had he kept going, Jerry might have been knocked aside, or been seriously injured, but survived. But when he hit the brakes, Jerry got caught on the front wheel, and his body was ground into the pavement like a cheese grater until the truck finally stopped. I was in shock. The entire scene had unfolded in slow motion, right in front of me. I stepped out of the guard shack and vomited at seeing the long red streak that started almost at my feet. The ambulance and the coroner arrived at the same time. There wasn't much of a body left to pronounce dead. I was treated for shock and sent home. I called off the next 2 days, took some tranquilizers, and tried to sleep. When I came back to work, I could still see a little bit of the red on the asphalt that they couldn't clean up. I quickly looked away. All night, I walked way around the spot, and wouldn't even look at it. My night was fairly quiet, nothing out of the ordinary. I read a newspaper someone had left from the day before. I scanned through it, ending up at the obituaries. The name Jim Yothers stuck out. I instantly recognized it from the second bottle cap. I swore off sodas right there and then. When I came back from a round, I found a soda sitting on the desk. I looked around, but no one was there. I threw it in the trash, having sworn to myself that I would never drink another soft drink after Jerry's death. When I came back from his next round, there was a soda sitting on the desk again. I looked in the trash, and the first bottle was still there. I looked at the second soda. The label said, "Win $10,000. My curiosity was stronger than my fear. I twisted off the lid. The hiss it made sounded like a snake. It gave me chills. I looked at the label again, only this time it said, "See the future." I immediately tightened the cap and threw the bottle away. During my next round, I kept looking back at the guard shack, to see who was messing with me. I had locked it, so no one could get in, and quickly did my round. I came back, unlocked the door, and there sat a new bottle. I refused to touch it. I filled out my paperwork, and quickly left for another round, locking the door on my way out. When I returned, there were 2 sodas. I ignored them the rest of the night. Before the next shift arrived, I took out the trash bag, full of sodas, and threw it in the dumpster. When the morning shift arrived, the officer asked me how my night was. "What's that supposed to mean?" I snapped. The officer was taken aback. Was all he could say. A week went by. Every night I went to work, dreading what would happen. Every morning, I threw away 8 unopened sodas. The stress was starting to wear on me. I was struggling to stay awake during my shift. I rarely slept at home anymore. Visions of Jerry's death, combined with increasingly more frequent headaches, weighed heavily on me. Finally, I cracked. As long as I'm getting free soda, I thought, I might as well use it. I opened one and drank it, refusing to look at the cap. As I was drinking, a swallow went down the wrong pipe, and I started to choke. I grabbed the desk to steady myself, dropping the bottle and cap. My coughing grew more intense. My breath came in shallow wheezes. Air wasn't making it to my lungs. The harder I struggled, the less air I got. Finally, when my vision began to swim, and I felt as though I was going to pass out, it suddenly subsided. As quickly as it had begun, it went away. My airway was clear as if nothing had happened. I took another drink to soothe my throat, then without thinking, bent over to pick up the cap. My own name stared back up at me from inside the bottle cap. I froze. I thought about closing my eyes, but knew it was too late. I sighed heavily, put the cap back on the bottle, and read the label. It read, "We warned you the penalty would be severe." I put the bottle back on the desk and slowly went for my next round. Everything seemed magnified. The shadows were darker, hinting at unknown phantoms waiting to drag me into their nether world. The warehouse became a giant beast, about to devour me. Every corner held anticipation of murders, demons, and perils unimaginable. Each hesitating step seemed an eternity. Every breath felt like my last. Although not thinking it possible, eventually I made it back to the guard shack. I took a drink from the soda bottle and realized, it was the only one there. No second soda had appeared tonight. I slumped into my chair. I knew I was a dead man, I just didn't know how it would happen. 3:30, I said aloud. I saw that cap around 3, so I have about 3.5 hours. I began to think about the things I wanted to do with what little time I had left. I got out a piece of paper and started writing. I'm not crazy, I started. Monday, when I opened my soda bottle, there was a name on the cap. I went on to explain everything that happened over the course of those 2 weeks. When I was done, I started to reread it and felt my eyelids getting heavy. Final report on file number 119574. The subject was found dead sitting on a chair in his guard shack. No apparent injuries. Cause of death, complications resulting from earlier head trauma due to an automobile accident. I finished typing my report and sent it off to the coroner. I sat back in my chair and stretched. It was well after midnight and it had been an extremely long day. I turned off the light in my office as I gathered my things and headed for the door. The nighttime janitor nodded to me as I locked up and headed for the elevator. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and wondered how I was going to drive the 40-minute commute home. The answer revealed itself in brightly colored shining lights as I stepped off the elevator. A soda machine stood waiting for me to avail myself of its wares. I picked the variety with the most caffeine and gratefully accepted the bottle that had rocketed to the receiving tray. The bottle hissed at me as I twisted the top and took a long gulp. Feeling refreshed, I headed for the dark parking lot lit only by a single streetlight fighting valiantly against the darkness. As I got in and started up the car, I took another drink. I glanced at the bottle and my veins turned to ice. It read, "See the future."